gentlemen, my guest today is Mr. Mudit Jain, Managing Director, DCW Limited. DCW is an industry pioneer since 1939 with India's first soda ash factory. Now has a diversity of product portfolio with 2 manufacturing units producing soda ash, caustic soda, chloralkali, PVC, and many more chemicals. They also have a range of home products. Very warm welcome to you, sir, to Insights with Nidhi Verma.
Thank you, Nidhi, for having me.
My first question would be, since you are a very keen observer on the evolution of the government policies, how would you see the journey of the government policies in the last decade for business in India?
So I'm very passionate because I feel for my country. And in 1990, when we started the reforms and opened India to the world, for the first 5 years, it was good because Indian companies could access foreign capital, interest rates came down. Aditya Birla said, I'm not afraid of competition. Competition should be afraid of me. But thereafter, after the first honeymoon, after 6-7 years, then imports started flooding in. And that's where the problem started. So my thoughts are racing. I'm going to go fast. If I'm going too fast, tell me. But so what happened then? In 1996, we started importing calcium carbide, which is an inorganic chemical. Even with a 40% import duty from China, the product was 4,000 rupees a ton cheaper than that available maybe 50 or 200 kilometers from my factory. So that was the level of competition by China. And the major reason why Indian product price was higher was because the power rate was 5 times the Chinese power rate. Similarly, furnace oil prices were 5,000 rupees in 1990. They shot up to 35,000 in the last few years. Even though we are supposed to follow import parity pricing on petroleum products, it's not happening. And then also, power rates went up, as I said, from maybe 85% 90 to about 7-8 rupees. Interest rates, while they've come down, they are far higher than international prices. And to drive home the point, the freight rate from South India to Delhi is 6,500 rupees a ton. Whereas from China to South India, it's only 4,000 rupees a ton. And this is because of the more than 200%, 250% taxes on petrol and diesel. So Indian industry got decimated within India, and thereafter in 2000 they went outside and made acquisitions. For example, in my industry, I know Tata Chemicals, Nirma, they acquired soda ash plants in Europe and America rather than expand in India. Tatas and Birlas, they bought billion-dollar purchases in the mid-2000s of Novelis by Birla and Chorus and Jaguar by Tata. So Indian industry got outsourced overseas, and many units like calcium carbide got closed down in India. One SSI manufacturer of calcium carbide, who then made acetylene black from it, shifted his plant to China because it was cost effective and importing the product into India. So this is the sad, I feel pain when my country suffers like this.
Mr. Jain, in today's scenario, do you think the government's policies are encouraging and enough for flourishing business in India?
Frankly, there are no policies. Earlier, we used to have 5-year plans, and then which were all, I think, not in tune with the times. And in 1990, the only policy has been reduction of import duties, and they made some good changes in freeing imports and things like that. But for the last 20 years, I don't see any policies. What are the policies? They've just tweaked FDI limits for investment into insurance sector and some other things, but not really, not for manufacturing, nothing.
But your company has done pretty well. So despite these lack of policy measures, how have you managed to kind of do well?
So necessity is the mother of invention, and in our own enlightened self-interest, we have to either be competitive in the rat race, keep running, or get extinct or closed down. So in 2002, the government of India, for all the companies, announced this CREP program, Corporate Responsibility Enviornment Protection, whereas they wanted to reduce electricity consumption and have cleaner technologies. So from 2005 to 2015, we have invested nearly 1,200 crores in our Tuticorin works, converting our caustic soda plant from mercury to membrane. Then that's not enough. We had to put a captive power plant, thermal power plant. We had a oil-based power plant, but then the oil prices went high. So if we didn't do that, we won't be competitive. Then we expanded our synthetic butyl capacity. That's a chlorine utilization product. And then we had to, because that caused pollution, this is the only first plant in the world of iron oxide regenerating from a synthetic butyl effluent. And then we put up a CPVC plant. And despite that, we are in trouble because we are constantly having to keep up, and the world changes so fast. But yes, we have tried to do what we could.
So you have been forced to kind of go into backward and forward integration, getting away from your core competency. If you have to do backward integration in PVC to reduce dependence on VCM imports, what would the constraints be now?
So, ethylene is not available in India. You have ethylene, EDC, VCM, and PVC. So ethylene is not available. And then to import that, that's a maybe 1,000 crore investment at port, constructing cryogenic tanks. And then even if you are able to we are getting VCM. If you get EDC, then to crack EDC to VCM, you have to have, again, an investment of about 600 crores, which doesn't make it viable at all. So the question does not arise. Chemplast, Sanmar, they had a distillery. So you can make PVC, green PVC from alcohol. So they had a distillery. They had to close it down because the government, even though they had their own alcohol, government allocated it. They had to go to the government to allocate the alcohol back to them. And the government preferred to make alcohol for, drinking purposes. So the question of backward does not arise.
So the red tape is very, very much there, despite the overall feeling that we are given. Mr. Jain, India is deficit in PVC to an extent of nearly 2 million metric tons per annum. It can easily absorb output of 4-5 plants or 400 to 500 KTA each. Correct. Still, none of the existing producers is planning new capacities. Neither are any foreign companies also investing or putting a plant. What could be the reason? Because every time this is brought up, even in Vinyl India, our signature summit.
So let me tell you, don't believe me. Water will find its own level. It will flow from higher ground to lower ground. The last expansion of PVC was Chemplast plant in 2007. After that, people have done debottlenecking and expanded by debottlenecking. No fresh plants have come. Because there's an import arbitrage of only 5% between EDC, VCM to PVC. In this 5%, if you put a 1 lakh ton EDC plant, it costs 600 crores. It doesn't make sense. So that's why no Indian company has gone in for that. In fact, there's negative duty protection in India. And I welcome foreign competition. Let the consumer benefit. Why they're not putting a plant? Because it's cheaper. Their input costs are much cheaper overseas and they don't suffer so much taxation. Much of which also is not covered under GST, like cement and steel, which goes in a factory, you don't get GST credit. The other taxes, captive power tax, then there is tax on petrol and diesel, again, outside the ambit. So for them, why should they want to put a plant in India? They prefer to export, and we don't have adequate import anti-dumping protection, or even if we have, it's inadequate.
Why even that is the reason why no one is building even caustic capacity?
Well, people have done debottlenecking, but no fresh plants are coming. That's true. And there's enough caustic. And despite that, caustic is imported in India. Nalco, which is a big government aluminium company, has a global tender in which foreign competitors also compete with India. And they are more competitive, but we also have to be competitive and match their prices and do business. So that's why it doesn't make sense for this heavy industry to, go on expanding when there is so much uncertainty. I read somewhere, someone said, we can have pen flick reforms. That is reforms at the stroke of the pen. Sadly, we have pen flick destruction. By a stroke of a pen, a fate of an industry can get decided. So that's why I welcome foreign investment, but why they're not coming? We should ask them why they're not coming.
The policymakers there. The industries like inorganic chemicals like calcium carbide industries, they were there in India and they completely got wiped out and they've all gone overseas. And all of it is imported in India now. Why?
Yes, so again, take calcium carbide. We had 3 companies in the south, Panium Cements, Tessel, Travanco Electrochemical Industries, and India Cements had a unit called ICML, India Carbide and Monomers Limited. All 3 companies closed down in 2002, 2003. because the Chinese product was much cheaper, even with a 40% import duty. Can you imagine the extent of competitiveness of China? China encourages manufacturing. It's all a question of direction. You want to do something, you incentivize it, and people will follow. And then even take another inorganic chemical industry, titanium dioxide. There are 2 plants in India, both in Kerala. Their capacity is about 50,000. And then we had another plant coming of hardly 10,000. More than 1.5 lakh tons of titanium dioxide is imported. And we have the raw material, ilmenite ore, which is now they've done banned private mining. But that also no one is put up. In fact, we supply the raw material, synthetic rutile, to titanium dioxide companies in Japan and elsewhere. And we have told them many times, put up your TI2 plant in our campus. But they haven't. They just smile because it doesn't make economic sense. That is the bottom line. Whether you take my word or anyone else, and on paper we can have good cogent reasons, but water finds its own level.
That's true in business specifically. Mr. Jain, then why are companies like Tata's and Birla's, which are the bigger category companies, they are investing overseas?
So one is their strategy is very correct. Birla's went overseas to acquire Novelis. So the finished product, aluminium, they could cater from India to make it into finished product overseas. So it makes very good business sense for them. They could put a plant in India, but we know how difficult it is. Tata's wanted to acquire marquee brands of Jaguar and also probably export their Tisco steel to Chorus, which made value-added steel. So it made great sense for them. And but we should see why aren't those companies wanting to put companies in India, where God has blessed India with all the minerals, but they remain underneath the surface of the earth and not exploited because of our rules, regulation, red tapeism, what have you. I don't want to quote the terrible stories. In fact, the beach sand or ilmenite mineral industry were exporting about 4,000 crores worth of basic ilmenite mineral. Now that industry shut. Only one government company, Indian Rare Earth, is exporting. So this is, in fact, even if someone has exceeded and done some, produced more and accounted less, levy a penalty on them and move ahead. But you destroy a whole industry.
Mr. Jain, after listening to so much, I would like you to underline that where is it exactly that the government policies for our sector are failing short to provide a business level field to compete with the world market?
Perfect. So if you ask me, there are 4 or 5 things which are the lifeblood of industry all across. One is power, one is interest, one is oil, like furnace oil, and then there's infrastructure costs. So power, our rates are 7-8 rupees, whereas NTPC supplies to the state electricity boards at below 2 rupees or around 2 rupees. So they give it to us for such higher prices industry because they then give free power to farmers, or they have 40%, I believe, is the power theft. So we should be provided at cheaper prices at international cost. Then secondly, interest. Our rates are 12 to 14%, and these are for medium-sized good companies, whereas internationally is 5% or below. Then come to furnace oil. Prices went up to 35,000 about 2 years ago. Internationally, it would have been about 15 to 20,000 because the oil companies, to cover their deficits in other areas, are overcharging on furnace oil. And then fourthly, and then transportation like petrol and diesel. So from China to India is cheaper than from South India to North India. Even our container freights are from India to New York. The freight rates are much higher than from Thailand to New York. And all this is because of higher taxation and higher price inputs. You supply that at international prices, great. If you cannot, then increase the import duties. Get people to invest in India. They create jobs. That's if you ask me, amongst all this noise, job creation is the single most important thing. And let anyone make. I would say let the government put up their own factories. Gujarat Alkali is an outstanding example of a good chlor-alkali company. Let there be in each and every sector if they feel industries or other private sector is not coming forward.
Just like you mentioned, that how is it possible for Chinese companies to be competitive when they are covering the entire freight from the China mainland through the ports to India, and then from inside India, we have a huge area ourselves. How do they maintain themselves competitive, sir?
So from my knowledge, and Chinese data is not very public, is that input costs were much higher. Much cheaper, I'm sorry. In Inner Mongolia, where we were getting carbide, it used to be 50 paisa in 1996, 97. Whereas in India, it's about 2.5 rupees at that time. So they were competitive, whether they were subsidized by the government or whatever reason, I don't know. Similarly, accounts for transportation. Then take interest rates. We don't know what the interest rates in China are. And then China is not a market economy. They may call themselves that. And they've done phenomenally well. We should learn from their government actually and encourage manufacturing in India, which has fallen from nearly 33% of GDP around 2000 to around 15% or below in about 2017 or so. So we should learn from them. And then thirdly, for exports, they were giving good incentives to exports, whereas here we are withdrawing incentives. MEIS is 1%, 2%, and then they want to phase it out. So they don't want to encourage. And the yardstick of any business is to be globally competitive. In India, we have the added advantage of I would say, big domestic market, but per capita is very, very low. So we should capitalize on this and encourage it. Sadly, our government wants to make us a nation of traders. Like Britain is called a nation of shopkeepers. India has become a nation of traders. That's why our trade deficit is $200 billion. And with China, it's $60 billion. Even Ganpatis are made in China. Lights are branded in China and imported into India. We should ask those businessmen why they are doing so, or business people, why they're making in China and importing into India. I believe in watches also, clocks are also made there.
No, everything.
That
electronics, electrical.
So we should learn. In fact, Japan started MITI in the 1950s to develop it from the ashes of World War II. And there was the Raj Kapoor song in Avara, Mera Juta Hai Japani. So they were making shoes in the 50s. Then MITI was set up by Emperor Hirohito for cooperation between government and business. And then the rest is history. In 70s, they took over the world automobile market, then electronic markets. So we should have such initiatives. We are partners with them. They are above us. But sadly, we have so many interactions. But frankly, nothing happens. From whatever representations we have been making from 1990, if they open the file, the same points will be repeated in 2020. So what's the point then?
Which you're saying that, we are more of a trading kind of community.
Yeah.
Which products from our industry specifically are exported currently from India? Okay, so there are in the organic chemicals, there are exports, and those are, it's all good, but they are dangerous, hazardous, and polluting industries like dyestuffs and pesticides and weedicides. These are difficult products, but hats off to the Indian companies, they have done very well. So these are exported. Maybe many European countries may not want to manufacture these products, which is fine. It's good. At least India is able to produce them. And then if you look at the other basket of exports, what are our products? It's meat, it's leather, it's jewelry, but a lot of imports of, diamonds and then re-exported. And textiles used to be big. Maybe that's now much lesser. So if you ask me, take in our sector, PVC, hardly any exports, not even 1%. In caustic soda, also less than 1%. In soda ash, also less than 1%. In fact, 20% of soda ash is imported to India. At about 15% of caustic is imported. In PVC, more than 100% is imported. So in specifically my sector, nothing. But this is what it is. It doesn't look a very good story there.
Because, yes, it is. I feel pain. You're right.
Mr. Jain, post Galwan, currently, the China sentiment is extremely negative. They have even lost the case of you for making them in parity economy power.
Yes.
What is your opinion on allowing the imports of either finished goods or raw material or components to our industry in China, from China?
So it's complicated in the sense that I want to look at things from my perspective. Mine means India's perspective and interest. So if you require something from China, which provides job and employment in India for making some other product, we should import just because they've attacked us and done wrong. It is further depriving Indian business of revenue and employment. So you have to look at it. Maybe it's a complicated exercise, but on the face of it, it's difficult to say. I will not say yes, import should be banned. Yes, what we can do is levy a duty. So make their products a little more expensive, like a COVID tax, which has been mooted, 15% COVID tax. So we can do things like that. And China is not a market economy. So these would be easier to impose on China, impose costs on it.
What are your views on the anti-dumping duties and the changes in the anti-dumping laws since the value has come down drastically?
Yes, so sadly, again, our government in their wisdom, the ADD cell or the Ministry of Commerce, tinkered with the WTO norms for anti-dumping. So there are some norms for calculation of products and what you compare with, dumping margin, injury margin, etc. Sadly, the government about 10 years ago, I've lost track now, and we have represented numerously, and also we filed a case from the Alkali Manufacturers Association of India with the government, and then we withdrew that, and then they were to come back. So the point is, what is this injury margin has come down drastically for 2-3 reasons. One is the imported product price is a CIF product price delivered into India, whereas our product is compared with ex-works price. It should be both delivered to the customer. So we lose out on that. Then similarly, earlier they were taking market prices of inputs. Like many plants have put power plant because you don't get regular power, or we used to not get regular power, and they're much higher from the grid. So we used to be able to get market prices of power. But now we are forced to use our captive rates. And then there are 2-3 best consumption norms. So all that has whittled down the injury margin further. So the anti-dumping or the duties have come down drastically. And it takes over a year. Maybe the departments are not staffed properly. And that's why they take so much time. Whereas in a country like America, they finish the investigation in 4 or 5 months. So the government must look at it. They're not focusing on business at all. The IT industry is doing well, so that's fine because they don't require any of these kind of measures or support.
There is a talk of a lot of companies saying that maybe they want to shift their manufacturing base from China and locate them elsewhere. Where do you think India currently stands in taking that pie?
I welcome them. We have got good infrastructure. They would like to come. I'd be happy to partner with them, give my infrastructure, their investment. But if you look at it for these reasons that I'm saying, they will not come. We can make empty statements that they will come or we are wooing them. But why didn't they choose to come all these years? Forget even before the anti-China sentiment. If India is so-called a big market and also it's profitable, why didn't they come? So frankly, I don't think they'll come, but I wish they would come. However, I have to tell you one sector which has grown in India is the auto sector, because the import duties there are 60%. Maybe before that it was even higher. So that forced companies to import CKD kits or to make the cars in India. So if you incentivize industries or companies, they will come. Otherwise, so we have got a good back office for IT. They have come because the costs are cheaper here. Again, water finds its own level.
No, so sorry to say, but what you're saying is that if you really want the indigenous, the verticals to grow, the business to grow, the only way is to put high import duty. Is that the right way?
Or give cheaper input prices. Yes, yes, because we can't compete. And it's not because of us. In power consumption, in India, we have converted 100% to membrane cell technology. Whereas in Europe, it wasn't converted until about 5-6 years ago. In America, they still have diaphragm cells. So yes, it is not, it is a fact. It's unless we have input prices, international rates, or high import duties, industry will remain. It will further sink further. Yes.
That doesn't seem like a very good
Yeah,
scenario.
it isn't. But then we have to see, why don't we reduce the input cost? Why we have a 50 megawatt power plant. The power rate is cheaper than Tamil Nadu Electricity Board, which has got a 210 thermal power station where we get power from. So we have to go into the details and then come up with solutions. Yes.
Mr. Jain, I really appreciate your sharing your views so honestly. And I know that it comes out of the pain of the difficulties that you face with all good intent. Now I want to ask a few questions related to the PVC and the caustic, specifically that industry. How currently the producers saddled with unsold stock of PVC in the last quarter?
So in April, it was bad because, there's demand destruction in India. However, later on, it has picked up probably because of agriculture, the monsoons being good and PVC pipes are being used in agriculture. So of late, the demand has been brisk. In caustic, there is a big demand destruction. Even companies like Nalco, their production is down. Many of the other end consuming sectors is down. So it is very badly affected in caustic soda.
Oh, that's sad to hear. How is the government spending on infra and demand for the agricultural sector for pipes? Because that sector usually depends on that.
So it's too early to say, but so far since the farmers are buying pipes, and they feel that agriculture will be booming, so hopefully government will continue with whatever they are doing and spend more and give priority to agriculture, which again is not given that much importance. Our yields per acre or hectare are much less than other countries. So the government cannot, they should encourage others to get into it. Like MITI, have a committee of professionals, because it's difficult. Here, it's more like electioneering and the economy is on autopilot, if you ask me.
India's polymer consumption growth has always been more than the GDP in the last years. If the GDP is not going to grow for 2021, are we heading towards a flat or a negative polymer growth consumption in our country?
So it's very difficult to say right now, but our our production of these polymers is very low to begin with. So we have to go up. In PVC, it's in single digits per capita, whereas even in countries like Brazil, it's in double digits. Same way with caustic soda also. So we have to go up. So in polymers, it should go up. But now with all this, and then there's an anti-plastic movement also. I would say plastics prevent cutting of trees. Many of these, door frames and small things and many other things. So we are living in a world, people should look holistically. And plastic provides a service. The problem is in the disposal of some, not PVC, but other plastics. So which we should, government should equip it or make some standards. So we recycle that.
China is ahead of us in the COVID curve, and they are also ahead in opening up of their factories and economy. So there is a widespread kind of fear amongst the domestic policy players that they're all going to dump their PVC into our India market. How have you been tracking it, and what is the view in the last quarter?
So far that has not happened, because but PVC is coming from many countries, South Korea, Taiwan, even USA, and other countries. So let's see. I hope the government, they keep on asking for notes. What are your imports from China? What are critical? What are not critical? And I hope they take some action, not only on PVC, but even other things, which India has manufacturing capacity and can meet at least a significant part of its demand. Right now, demand for all sectors is down. So we have to see how times are. I think it's going to come down even further. So actually, we are becoming Atmanirbhar with lesser production.
How do you? I understood that. How do you see the vinyl industry going forward in the next maybe balance of 20?
It's very difficult. If I say something, I'll be lying. It's difficult to predict anything, but if one sees that agriculture will get more impetus, so in that PVC will do better, and other plastics are at a very packaging, so they are at a very low level. So I think they will grow. To what extent, I'm unable to talk about other sectors, but it will grow overall.
Fair enough. The chlorine industry has been impacted, as a lot of chlorine gets used in bleaching and water treatment industry. Do you think you see a growth in that?
Sadly, no. There's no offtake. There's demand destruction both in caustic and chlorine. And in India, we have a double whammy. In foreign countries, it's called a chlor-alkali industry, where chlorine is the major product and caustic is the byproduct. And they are value-added chlorine products. Sadly, we have not been able to do that in India because the markets are not there of that volume. Then the technology for these chlorine derivatives is closely guarded. And then it's massive investments. And with such import duty protection, no one will want to put up any plant in India for Indian market. And why should they export it to their country if the inputs there are cheaper? But to answer directly your question, there is a demand destruction in chlorine and caustic also right now.
Understood. The recent measures that were taken by the government to protect the domestic CPVC industry, do you have any plans to expand in that CPVC capacity?
So first, let me set the record straight. When we put, government is always saying that Indian producers are charging high prices. When we put up the CPVC plant, which was about 2017 or 16, 3-4 years ago, CPVC imports were $2,000 a ton. Then they fell down to $1,200 because we had put it up. And now they've just gone back to similar levels. So there's nothing great. Our projections have been much below what we had estimated earlier. And now they've just gone back to their original. And there is a demand for it. Even in PVC, there's a demand. But where's the money when the industry is in such dire states and there's demand destruction in all sectors? So unless those sectors are revived and we have to have a new way of working. So we would like to expand, but it depends on many of these, on financial constraints and other.
Business sense after all.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Mr. Jain, with an increase in the emphasis on the hygiene and the water supply, especially in the rural areas, of course, the urban slums we see in Mumbai here now, post the pandemic, will the government take more initiative to increase the spend in improving the water distribution? And hence, we should see more demand in our pipes?
So we have had many seminars through the Alkali Manufacturers Association to promote chlorination of water, because that is for safe drinking water. And despite having many seminars, and we called people from the water treatment boards across the various states, because the state which operates the water plants, they have antiquated plants. The requirement of chlorine is negligible. It has not gained traction. They have their own probably problems. So it's not really happening. We have given to some neighboring villages some bleach, sodium hypochlorite as they wanted. But sadly, it has not gone in a big way. Government has not done anything great other than we provide free service by giving free. And we work with enlightened self-interest. In fact, I think the public sector has become more private and the private sector has become more public, where we are giving many of these things because we care for it and it's our enlightened self-interest. Whereas I don't see that sentiment expressed by the government in action form.
Mr. Jain, I can't thank you enough for bringing out the issues that are faced by the industry so upfront, which are the changes in the policies that need to be made. And as you said, that the private companies are becoming more public and the public are becoming more private. I think the policymakers need to hear this message for the industry so that we can at least have a level playing field and then actually go and fight competition in a fair way.
So I would like to just leave with this final thought. We have been making in India, as you said, my grandfather took over the company in 1949, even though in 1939 it was christened at Drangadhar Chemical Works. We have been making in India for over 70 years. So this make in India and all, and sadly the people who are making in India are having more problems than people who have gone overseas. And as a good colleague of mine said, actually now the slogan is the world makes for India. So let's get back to see how Indians can make for India and for the world also. We have got CEOs, Indian origin CEOs all over the world. Why not Indian products all over the world?
Totally agree with you. And we will ensure that this message at least reaches the policymakers. That is, we can only do that. But I think the industry, they're all reaching out to the policymakers in different formats through different associations. I think we need to have one voice for the industry, all get together, because what you've said through this interview, there are a lot of gaps that need to be filled, Mr. Jain.
Thank you, Ms. Verma, for spreading the word. What's the good word? And please be at it for our country.
We will do so. That's the minimum we can do. And thank you for your time and your honest opinion. Appreciate that a lot.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.